Welcome back to JA Inspire Virtual. I'm your host, Dr. Troy Podell, and with me is Nate Armstead. Nate is a solution engineer at Salesforce, where he's responsible for helping some of the largest companies in the world meet their technology goals. Nate began his career working in customer support, where his passion for technology eventually led him into sales and technical consulting. You can find out more about Nate's fantastic company, Salesforce, at salesforce.com. Nate, thank you so much for being with us today.
Very nice to be here.
And thank you for making the time. I'm very grateful. Nate, I'm curious, what exactly does a solution engineer do?
I get that question quite a bit. And if we were to boil it down into a couple of key things, it would be we're involved in the sales process to help demonstrate and articulate the finer technical details of our software offering. So if there is a geek in the room, it's typically me.
So you're the technical expertise that goes alongside the sales process, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do things like conduct client discovery calls where I try to understand the customer's actual environment, their technology stack, as we call it, to understand how best to marry our solutions to what they have to meet their needs, and meet with executives to kind of understand their strategy goals from a business perspective. Something some of my customers are trying to do right now is figure out how to open back up their offices. And so we're trying to work with them right now to design technology solutions to help support that effort. And then, biggest part of my job is doing customer presentations and technical demonstrations of our products, all with the goal intent to increase sales and accelerate the sales along with my selling partners that I work with.
And then I'm curious, what motivated you to get into this line of work in the first place?
That's a good question. So for me, I was always attracted to technology. It was always something I loved. I loved video games as a kid. I loved taking things apart. I was always kind of curious about the latest and greatest things that I would see on TV or on the internet. And that passion never really left me. So when I did my undergraduate, I studied communications actually, and didn't really touch technology, science whatsoever. But after I graduated, I had the opportunity to work at a software company. And I started at the bottom level. And really just from there, it really kind of reawakened that passion. Like, this is really maybe where I belong, using technology to help make people's lives easier. And the role I walked into was, base level customer support, answering phones, answering emails. But I could see that oftentimes the customers that were contacting me, they just needed to be taught how to better use the products. And it wasn't really an issue of something not working. It was just an issue of education. So for me, I have teaching in my blood. My mother's a teacher. I have a lot of teachers and aunts and uncles. And I think that kind of component, married to just the passion I had about technology and how much I love to talk about it and learn about it, is really kind of how I ended up in this solution engineering role.
So it's a passion play, if I'm hearing you correctly, that it's an interest that you've now been able to marry to a career, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think curiosity was always one of my main features. As a kid growing up, it got me into trouble sometimes, but I think having that passion and just wanting to understand how things worked is really kind of how, and being able to do that every day is what really resonated with me with this career. It makes me so happy to go to work every day.
As a fellow communications school graduate, I'm curious, how has that education informed your professional practice now in solution engineering?
Well, nice to hear from a fellow communications grad. And, I love to tell people that I have a communications degree because, number one, I think a lot of people think that you have to study science or math to get into software or technology when you really don't. We all grew up with the internet. All of our students are growing up with the internet, and you probably know a lot more than you think. But for me, communications, I was able to leverage it to kind of learn about understanding people. And that was another thing that I've always wanted to do in my life, is to be understood and to also understand. So, with the communication, there were certain frameworks that I learned about how to understand and work with different personalities, inside the workplace, outside of the workplace. And then, that passion and being able to like establish strong lines of communication between me and just about anybody really lent itself well to, walking into sales conversations where you don't know if this executive is, had a really bad day, or they hate, they hate their computer for some reason, and we would represent that to them. So, just learning how to understand and understand personas, personalities, and interface with them effectively, and really try to understand and speak their language has been, immeasurably useful to me. So I love my communications background. I think it really kind of laid a nice foundation for all the work I do today.
Nate, what's your favorite part of your job?
That's a good question. Well, if you'd asked me when I first started, I would say that I get to work from home, and that is still a very nice part of my job, even though we're all kind of doing that now anyway. But for me, I think it's that my job is never the same every day. And that can be a good and a bad thing. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but I get to learn new things every day. I get to learn from great people every day. So, we're a large company, about 40,000 at last count. So, there's so many people all over the company that are great people willing to jump in to help. And, I think what I like the most, though, is that Salesforce, and this is really, I guess, less specifically about my job, but, kind of at my company, we're a company that really values equity and equality. So I get to actually have opportunities to, do things like this and volunteer and get out into the community and support projects and like build things for free for people that kind of help them with technology and use the technology for good. So, I think that was always like kind of a dream I had. It's like, can't we just solve this problem with a computer? I wish I could do it. And now I get the opportunity to, if not do it directly, work alongside other people to do it and support, the world at large, in a number of ways.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is.
Nate, if I'm a student watching you now, 16, 17-year-old kid who's, similarly, has beaten all my friends at Madden and is, or whatever the game du jour is, Minecraft, or no, I guess it's Fortnite.
Good one. Yeah.
So I'm the Fortnite expert, and I'm thinking like, hey, maybe I want to pursue this as a career. What advice do you have for a kid that's so situated?
I'd say, don't be afraid of learning something. Don't think that because you don't know something right now that it is so far beyond you. I think, even though I talk about, I love having my communications degree and, it taught me a lot of great things. I think, at 17, I was still kind of like intimidated by a lot of things like math and science because maybe, the specific subjects that I studied weren't as interesting to me as certain things. So I just thought maybe the whole thing isn't for me. And I think, when it came to things like video games, for example, and I was always interested in like, working in an industry like that, but I just thought there was too much of a knowledge gap. And now, in hindsight, I can see that in another life that could have been. So, leverage your resources, Google that thing that you need to find out that you're curious about. Just put the word in, search it. I mean, find out the first thing about it, and then maybe you'll want to find out the second thing about it, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just if you're curious about something, follow that curiosity and don't be afraid of failing, because either way, if you find out you don't like it, good, cross it off the list. If you find out it's too complicated for you, cross it off the list. But you've nurtured that muscle of kind of chasing down those ambitions. And I think that's one thing I would have loved to tell to myself, is just like, don't be afraid of learning about anything. Don't put yourself in a box.
Along that line, if you've got 17-year-old Nate Armstead by the shoulders, what other advice would you give him?
This one would be a lot more tactical. And I know we have some students listening. So tune in, do your homework. Just do your homework and ask for help if you feel overwhelmed. Because I think for me, I was a lucky student that I was very good at taking tests, but I didn't have to do a lot of work at home. So sometimes I just didn't do it. But I found that, as I moved into college, I was missing a lot of stuff. And I kind of talked about building a muscle. I missed that kind of like self-motivation muscle. Like when nobody's looking, I know how to get things done for myself. So, that's not everybody's struggle, but I would say for, make sure you meet your commitments. I'll put it that way. So if it's homework, great, make sure you do that. But if you're supposed to do something, do it. And you'll be surprised, after time, how much it becomes satisfying just to be done with it. If that's the motivation that you don't have to do it anymore, or maybe you learn something through that process. Like for the example of homework, like you could learn the subject itself or just learn how to work through a problem. So I think, just make sure you commit to things that you can handle, ask for help, but then execute, follow through on those commitments that you do make and that people expect from you.
Sage advice, Nate. Super grateful for it. This has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for hosting me. You guys have a great day.
You too. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Folks watching at home, we'll be right back in a little while with another exciting interview.